are now listening to a Forward Mile Podcast Network production.
All right, welcome into the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. Myself and the producer are sitting in studio. A couple of slackers who, I guess, call themselves working men had to work today. But they were kind enough to join us on the phone. Spike and Anthony are joining us. Telecommunications is the new key to podcasting. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy 9-to-5s to do the podcast with us.
9 to 5, I don't do 9 to 5, but yeah. Just as better than nothing, but yeah.
I do a 9 to 5, and I'm
still doing
I'm hoping that nobody comes into my office during this.
That's all right. They all know you're not really working, so they just leave you be. All right, so let's dive right in and talk about our brackets, because I have one Final Four team left. That's it for me. What about you guys?
I have 3 remaining.
Fuck you.
I have 2.
Oh,
I
you
have 2, including my national champion.
Yeah, my national champion's gone.
National champion's no lie. Yeah.
Yeah, so, the producer was over here. Desiree was crying tears when Xavier went down to Florida State. Ironically, the team I root for. I mean, I don't root for Florida State hoops because I could care less about basketball 340 days out of the year. But it's nice to see Florida State pick up a nice victory over a 1 seed. Somehow Leonard Hamilton continues to keep his job when, from all the things I've read, he should have been fired years ago. But, beating a 1 seed will probably buy him a 3-year extension.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's take a look at some of those games. Obviously, UMBC's magical run is done. Spike, I think you only had them getting to this point, correct?
Yeah, I had them losing to Creighton, even though Creighton couldn't get past Kansas State. But, I figured they were one and done, even if they were able to win. That high of being able to win is going to be such a letdown when they have to go into the second round and actually play another game. I didn't think they'd be able to handle it, and not only weren't they able to handle it, but hot hand Lyles there couldn't hit a goddamn shot for about the entire second half. So that kind of killed them.
They were able to cover the spread on that game of 10. So
yes, that is true.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that's a bonus. But looking at this South region, I mean, it's amazing. Like, my champion to come out of that was Cincinnati. I had them going all the way. Well, that's, over and done with. Now you've got the craziness that is Kansas State, a relatively middle-of-the-road Big 12 team who just had an average season. You have Loyola Chicago and Sister Jean and her bad self who picked them to go to the Sweet 16 but then ultimately lose to Cincinnati at this point. She's only half right. They're probably going to lose, but they're probably going to lose to Nevada at this point. So you look at the South region, and all of a sudden, Coach Calipari, who was bitching, moaning, and complaining that he got the bracket of death as a 5 seed, now has to go through a 9 seed and potentially a 7 or 11 seed to get to San Antonio, Texas. So maybe the committee didn't give him such a bracket of death after all.
yeah, it's quite surprising. I mean, a 5 seed is the lowest seed remaining after the Sweet 16, and one region is first.
Yeah, that's got to. I don't have the almanac in front of me, but that's got to be a pretty up there as far as the lowest seed to ever come, to ever advance to the Sweet 16, and the lowest seed that's probably going to, the highest seed of what's left is a 5, 9, 7, and 11, which is crazy because you imagine like Loyola coming out of this conference or out of this region would be crazy,
At this point, I could see it happening, though. I mean, this year's been full of upsets. I mean, nothing would surprise me.
Speaking of upsets, I mean, Nevada, Spike, came back from, 24 points down or so?
Yeah, it was either 22 or 24 in my mind.
Well, Spike, you sound
I mean, it's just, this entire bracket has just been such a weird thing. I mean, think about bigger picture, like, even if people didn't have Virginia coming out of this part of the bracket, how many people didn't have Cincinnati as a 2 or Tennessee as a 3 or Arizona as a 4? Like, the fact that a 5 is most likely to come out of this at this point is absurd. But, I mean, the way things are going, how do you bet against somebody like a Kansas State or Nevada to come out? I mean, it's just... I with Nevada's tenacity being able to overcome that huge deficit, I think I'm riding them for the rest of the way through this bracket.
Yeah, from what I've read in the Mountain West, I mean, they were a top quality team. They played some quality opponents this year. So Nevada, almost as a 7 seed, feels like they were seeded too low, and they've crept up on teams. We've always said that they've put this thing together the last few years just to create chaos in matchups. And, at least in the South region, they've done exactly that. I mean, Loyola, Nevada, Kentucky, and Kansas State. I mean,
right.
I thought Kentucky's exactly...
Let's not forget, too, that Nevada, they're coming out of a non-power conference, but half of their starters came from schools in power conferences. They have a couple of guys, I think, from NC State, one from Kentucky, and these were all guys that transferred over to Nevada so they could get more playing time.
Right.
These aren't slouches, and these aren't like typical Mountain West caliber players. This is a team that can and should be able to compete, which is something I wish I had known when we were doing the original bracket predictions.
Well, it was in your research. You just had to Google.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at this South region. If we can bounce darts, we can throw darts off a wall, or we can, blindfold this one. I mean, you have Kansas State versus UK. The hunter now becomes the hunted in the Wildcats. Actually, they're both Wildcats. Kentucky becomes the hunted as the higher seed. What do you guys think about this matchup? Who wins? Who goes on?
I would take Kentucky in this matchup.
Yeah, I'd be. It's difficult to pick against an underdog at this point, especially in this bracket. But the numbers don't lie. They have Kentucky, and they're scoring more points. They're a much more potent offensive team than Kansas State. I don't see how Kentucky loses this one.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm on Kentucky. I think that they, at this point, obviously they're the best team on paper in the region. They're clicking on all cylinders. I think they're going to move on against Kansas State. Then you have the Sister Jeans versus the Nevada Wolfpack. Is this where the clock strikes midnight?
I don't know necessarily. I can see either of these teams advancing. In my mind, it's going to be a high-scoring game, fast-paced. And I actually like Loyola out of this one.
You like Loyola to advance, eh?
Yeah. They got this far. What's another game?
Yeah, it could go either way, I guess, right?
I mean, yeah, this is one of those games where, again, nothing would surprise me, but, given what Nevada has been able to do and what I think they're capable of, I think I got to take the Wolfpack in this one. As much as it pains me to pick a team from the North, I think they're too strong this time around.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Wolfpack will advance in this one too. Loyola is probably going to be done at this point, but like you said, you never know. They still may have the magic in them for one more game. I mean, buzzer beater shots seem to be their forte, and Nevada can't sit back on their heels again and let another team, come up by 20 against them. So Nevada will be ready, and Loyola will give it their best effort. We'll see what happens. I think Nevada's too strong for them, but like Token Tony likes to say, I guess it could go either way. So let's look at the other side here and look at the West, because these are the two crazier of the two regions. Obviously, this one you're not going to have anything higher than a 3 seed go to the Final Four from this region. You have Florida State facing off against Gonzaga, and Michigan facing off against Texas A&M. A&M with a dominant win. Michigan, we all seen the buzzer beater from the corner with the funky shot. I had Houston going to my Final Four. I think Houston was the better team in that matchup with Michigan. And Texas A&M has shown me that they have 2 very big dominant playmakers on their team that I don't know if Michigan can cover. What do you think, Token?
I agree. I don't think Michigan will cover in this game.
Okay, solid analysis. Spike?
I believe this might be done for Michigan.
Repeating same things. All right, Spike.
Yeah, I mean, these teams, based on, and again, I'm not going so far in depth that CBS might get confused and hire me as an analyst on this thing. But
nobody's thinking that.
Just based on what I've seen, the numbers that I've seen, like they're both 500 against top 32 teams. They're averaging almost exactly the same points per game. A&M's at 75, Michigan's at 74.5. I mean, this is just a little too even for me to like. I think based on performances in this tournament, you got to like A&M. I think that they can upset.
That's true. I think I'm going A&M as well in this spot. So I think we all kind of agree with the A&M train. I think they've looked really good in 2 games. The Providence game wasn't as close as the number would lead on. And to be honest with you, Michigan even had a little bit of hard time with Montana. And like I said, I think that even at the 6th seed, Houston was the better team in that matchup. They just, you got to hit the 2 free throws at the end, and then they're advancing. And then I'm sitting here taking Houston in this spot. So, Texas A&M, I'm rolling with that as well. Florida State versus Gonzaga. I don't know if Florida State's talented enough to continue this run. I know they beat Xavier. They got a couple of fortunate calls, in my opinion. Gonzaga really hasn't played anybody. I think Ohio State was overrated, in my opinion, based on the seeding they got. And they had a tough time with UNC Greensboro, not covering, obviously, and having to basically play down to the wire. Makes for a tough matchup. I think Gonzaga's going to stumble here, and Florida State's going to head to the Elite Eight.
I disagree. I think they're going to win. I actually think they might cover this game.
What do we have the line on that one as? Let's see.
5.5.
6.5, 5.5 from Vegas Insider. 5.5 most spots. It opened up at 6.5. It's already been bet down to 5.5. So.
Yeah, I like it at 5.5. Gonzaga. I just have a feeling when they make it deep in the tournament, they always perform very well. So.
Yeah, Florida State plays really good defense. That's what they do well. When the shot can fall, they can definitely keep up with the team like they did. I mean, they got behind by double digits to Xavier, continued to play defense. Eventually, they found their stroke, and they were able to come back. And I think they're going to be able to kind of play the same press that West Virginia plays, and they're going to play that on Gonzaga. Can Gonzaga counter with that? Probably not, but they're going to obviously have the talent to play back at Florida State. They're a better team on paper than Florida State. So, Spike, I'm going to take the upset again. I obviously have said that already. So what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, again, and again, because I'm not watching these games day in and day out, I have to look at overall statistics, and the numbers are telling me Gonzaga. And Gonzaga has the better offensive production, higher field goal percentage, higher free throw percentage, more rebounds per game. Like I don't see a category where Gonzaga is weak enough for Florida State to exploit it. I don't see how the Zags lose this one.
Well, you're also looking at statistics from a team who plays in the West Coast Conference versus a team who plays in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
True, but you have to beat the teams in front of you.
I'm not discrediting Gonzaga. I'm just telling you. I mean, Florida State gets Duke, UNC, Virginia, Syracuse, Louisville. I mean, that's 10 games right there.
Yeah, that's a little tougher of a schedule, but
Clemson as well.
I'm agreeing with Spike on this one.
Okay.
I don't care. I'm not going to let Aaron's Florida bias sway me at all. I'm still picking the Zags.
All right, fair enough. Well,
the Gonzaga University.
My Florida bias swaying you to take a 9 seed. All right, well, these two sides of the bracket are a little more chalky. Let's go in the Midwest with the exception of Syracuse, who's the 11th seed, who upended Michigan State, which Token Tony so appropriately called last week. He called the upset on that one, so props to you.
Thank you. In the bracket, I had them advancing to the Sweet 16 as well.
Yes, you did. Syracuse finds a way. They were a 10 seed or a 9 seed one year, and they made the Final Four. I mean, do we see the same trend this year as an 11 seed, a team that probably should not have been in there based on all of the metrics? But they're a brand name in the Syracuse. They have a brand name coach, and here they are in the Sweet 16. I mean, they beat. I forget who they beat in the play-in game. Who did they beat in the play-in game? Arizona State.
Arizona State.
So they beat a team who.
Yep.
They probably should have beaten. TCU probably got a little bit of too much love being in the 6th seed there, and they had the game of their life against Michigan, and now they got Michigan State, and they got to do it again against Duke, who many believe is now the favorite to win it all behind Villanova.
I've heard in some polls Duke's the favorite even.
In some they are. You are correct. I've seen some sheets. Yeah. I've seen some sheets with them as 3-1 and Villanova 5-1. I've seen other sheets with Villanova 3-1 and Duke. I'm looking now is 15-4, which is basically 3.5 to 1.
Yeah. I like Duke in this matchup, but I don't think they're going to cover. The spread on this game is 11.5.
Yeah, that's a weird line considering, Spike, that they, Syracuse just did what they did, to a pick that everybody thought was sexy. A lot of people talked about Michigan State, but they had so many different outliering factors with the Larry Nassar situation and Tom Izzo being grilled about cover-ups, etc. I mean, he looks like he's aged 10 years, and and maybe they got a dose of being, a little bit distracted and got beat by a team that maybe they shouldn't have, or maybe 9 times out of 10 they don't get beat by.
Yeah, and, this was a game that I credit to Token Tony for picking Syracuse because God knows I didn't have them doing anything in this tournament. So I don't know, maybe I've been underrating them this entire stretch, but again, going back to numbers and going back to your point about conferences, certain conferences being tougher. What Duke has been able to do in their conference, the numbers they're putting up, I mean, this has to be the end of the road for Syracuse. Duke's too strong, they're too storied, and they have too experienced of a coach for them to be let down by a team like Syracuse.
Well, what about what Syracuse has been doing in their conference?
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about it. I mean, even in their conference, they're still averaging 68 points per game, whereas Duke's putting up 85. It's for as good as Syracuse is, Duke has been not only better, but significantly better in every major statistical category.
Now, Token, the line is currently 133 on the total. Duke, all I've heard a lot about is Duke's new revamped defense and how they've been able to shut people down. That's one of the lower lines I see here in the tournament. At 133. Do you like the over or the under in that game? Considering, last game Michigan State and Syracuse could only put up 108. Do you see it somewhere down in that total again, or do you think that Syracuse can find their swag and maybe kind of bust this defense that everybody's talking about?
I'm leaning towards the under, even though, Spike, you were saying average points per game for both teams is over 150 total.
Yeah.
I think Duke defense shows up. Syracuse keeps it somewhat moderately as a close game, and the final comes out to be like 65 to like 60 or something around that window. Pretty low scoring, pretty defensive-fied basketball game, and
Defensive.
a lot of time management.
That's a new word, defensified.
Linkativity.
Linkativity. Connectitude. All right, let's look at. Was there only one matchup? Okay, they only played once this year in the conference, Syracuse and Duke, and the final was 60-44 in that game. So you're talking 104 points in that game. So you're right. Statistically, you would say that that's the underplay. So I'm going to go ahead and agree with you on that. I think 133 is a lot of points, considering Duke got 87 last time, but the zone defense of Syracuse may be able to give them fits. So it'll be an interesting one. I think the under is probably a good play in that one too. You got Kansas, who I believe, Tony, that's your national champion.
That is right.
Going against Clemson, who just blew Auburn out of the water to, from what I understand, everyone's surprise except mine. I didn't think it would be that big of a deficit, but I did think Clemson is a better team than Auburn. According to Tony, Clemson's ride ends here. Do you still agree with your assessment of Kansas at this point?
I do. The spread I see is 4.5. If I were to bet this, I would take Kansas money line, not with the spread, because they give up last second threes to have somebody backdoor covers.
Yeah, I know you lost a big parlay on that
one.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So Kansas on the money line would be, at this point, according to the consensus, you'd be laying 220 to save those 4 points.
Yeah, I have 210 on mine,
so not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's realistic, yeah.
Spike, you still think Clemson, or excuse me, you think Kansas is going to beat Clemson in the spot?
No, but I'm not actually basing that on my usual statistics and deep analysis. I'm just looking at it as this year's been so crazy, I don't think I can trust the number 1 seed to hold on anymore.
Yeah, I think Clemson is better than even the 5 seed. They were a really good team all year. Kansas has a notorious spot for looking ahead in tournament matchups, and I think they're going to probably overlook this game to an extent. Maybe, the first 10, 15 minutes of this game might do them in. Looking towards, potential matchup with Duke in the Elite Eight, which could be the game of the tournament if that were to come together. I think Clemson can sneak up and bite them, and I think ultimately Clemson's going to get them, setting up Clemson versus Duke. So that will be my selection. Sorry, Token Tony, we have decided that your Kansas Jayhawk journey ends here, but I know that you're going to run with them.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll find out. See what happens.
Now let's
for the biscuit.
Now let's go to the region that looks the most intact, I guess you could say, with the exception of Wichita State. We have 1 versus 5 and 3 versus 2, including Spike's national champion, who's still in play, which is Texas Tech. Let's start with that game, because if I remember correctly, your pick was Texas Tech to win it all based on no logic, rhyme, or reason whatsoever.
I mean, there was a little bit of logic behind it, and it was
the fact that they have TT in their name, and when you grew up, you liked looking at TTs? I got nothing. That was the best I got.
I understand that you're currently controlling the board, but this is the time where I wish I had ESP so I could just mute your microphone from here on out.
Hashtag boob jokes.
No, the reason that I picked Texas Tech was even stupider than that. It was you and I both had Cincinnati in the championship game. You picked Cincinnati to be the champion, and I said, well, I can't pick the same team as you, so I have to go with my other one, which was Texas Tech.
Dang, I wish I came up with that theory first.
Yeah, that was about as in-depth as I got. No, I honestly have no idea what to make of this game. I picked Texas Tech kind of on a lark. I would like to be able to keep with them, but the numbers are telling me that, Purdue is and should be favored in this one, and it would be, I think, not just a small upset, but a rather large upset for Texas Tech to advance past this game.
Wow, a large upset. That's heavy thinking because, Purdue is missing their top inside guy, obviously. Haas, not 100% sure of the injury because some say it's a broken arm, some say it's a bruise. Everything in between has been labeled on him, and he's been everything including out for the tournament or potentially probable for the next game. And who knows? So the prognosis is that he's probably not going to play. I'm with you. I think it would be an upset. I don't know if it's a gargantuan upset, but I'm going to roll Texas Tech in this one too because Purdue actually over the last, I've been betting for a better part of a decade now. Purdue has burned me a lot of times, and they're probably going to burn me again by actually winning this game, but I'm not betting on them. So they're like the Jay Cutler of college basketball for me. So I'm going to roll Texas Tech at this point. I'm telling you, Jay Cutler burns me more than any other, NFL bet. Jay Cutler and the Bears, or both. So I'm going to roll with the anti-Jay Cutler at this point and go Texas Tech to take down Purdue and move on, and Spike Brackett will still be intact in that spot, so he can toot his own horn for a little longer.
Yeah. Usually I disagree with you guys, but I'm actually agreeing with you on this. With Purdue's main guy potentially being out, I think Texas Tech is the better team and will win, and I actually don't see this being too close of a game. I think they win almost by double digits.
So they're a dog at this point, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look back at the so it's a 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 to 2. Yeah. So essentially, I don't think Purdue really, handled Butler too well. I thought Texas Tech, even though the game was just as close, I thought Texas Tech seemed to be more of a controlled game against Florida. I actually looking at it, Spike, you might want to get on that futures bet at 30-1 for Texas Tech if you like it. You might want to sprinkle some. They're still 30-1 with 16 teams left. That's not bad. So.
Oh, shit, I'm doing that right now.
All right, plug and play. So we're all going to rock Texas Tech at that point. So let's see the money line at that point. You might, if you got them to win. Let's see, where's the money line? Plus 105. You might as well get the 15 cents back in your favor at that point. So, oops. Accidentally just closed the window. Yeah. That's not good. Let me see if I can pull it back up here. All right, the tournament bracket. So we got Villanova and West Virginia in the final game of the Sweet 16. It's not the actual final game, just the final game that we're looking at here. Villanova is one of the teams I picked to get to the Final Four. It's my only Final Four team remaining. With that being said, I believe West Virginia is going to beat them. I think West Virginia is going to suffocate these guys. So I'm going against my bracket at this point. I don't know if I am. I'm probably too chicken shit to lay the money line, and I'll just take the 5.5. But I believe West Virginia is going to take them down.
I do like West Virginia to cover, but I like Villanova to win the game.
And if you like,
I think Villanova's just good enough to win.
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. I mean, they are the number one seed. They are the best. Wait, what did you used to say? They are the best team in that bracket for a reason.
Yep.
So, Spike, your thoughts on Villanova and West Virginia?
I mean, is there any need to go all that deep? It's got to be Villanova at this point. As much as I distrust number ones, Villanova's playing too well, playing at such a high level, and statistically their numbers are significantly better than West Virginia in not only every category, but it's not even a contest at this point. I got to take Nova.
Fair enough, fair enough. So we've got the Sweet 16 rebranded because a lot of our bracket is Taylor Swift style, X'd up. And we'll reassess when we've lost all of our teams from this one. So we'll reassess that next week when we have to pick new Elite Eights. What else is going on in the world of sports here? Let's look down. Have you seen this 20 most dominant players of the last 20 years? Have you guys seen this article that I guess ESPN put out as I don't know what you would call it. I mean, obviously it's a great debater, but they call it the Dominant 20, and we already know they kind of hate New England, but they definitely didn't do Boston sports fans any favors, I can tell you that.
Yes. Yes, I definitely agree with you on that. I heard it on the radio, had to check it out for myself yesterday, and
so I don't disagree with a lot of these names, but the rankings, positions, and a few of the names I think are just absolutely atrocious. I'll read you a few. I mean, obviously they got Tiger Woods number 1. I mean, that's probably pretty safe, maybe a little debatable. LeBron James number 2. Do I think he's been the most dominant? No. I mean, he's dominated the Eastern Conference, which whoop-de-freaking do. I mean, it's not that hard. He's made 7 straight or probably 8 straight finals at this point, but he's not winning. He's not even winning 50% of them. So to put him number 2 is a little bit of an insult. And then here comes you have Peyton Manning number 3, which is ludicrous, in my opinion. I mean, not even trying to be biased at that point. Who's made 3 Super Bowls, 1, 2, kind of got gifted that.
4.
He's made 4 Super Bowls?
Peyton's made 4.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I forgot about the one against New Orleans. Yeah, I apologize. So he's made 4, 1, 2. So he's won 50% of his Super Bowls. I think the last one against Carolina was a gift. And then you put him against, obviously, who's the guy he's been debated with in the NFL the last 20 years. It's Tom Brady. Tom Brady's number 20. The guy's been to 8 Super Bowls, won over 50% of them. Multiple MVPs. I think 1 less than Manning at this point. Won an MVP at the age of 40, which is crazy. And you're sliding him 17 spots behind Peyton Manning. I mean, that's my first. I'll get to more of these guys, but that's obviously the first one that is going to jump off the page to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Tony, why don't you chime in, because obviously I'm the New England homer here, so I'm very much biased. I would like to get an outsider's perspective before I start my ranting and raving about this.
Okay. Yeah, in my mind, it's a lot closer than what it is, but I have Brady over Manning in my books.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that's because postseason player. I mean, though Peyton has dominated the regular season and puts up those numbers, but I mean Brady's right behind him in a lot of the categories that Brady hasn't already passed him in. So,
I mean, you've got Brady, who obviously, yes, I understand it's a team sport, but you've got Brady behind, other team sport athletes that you haven't, if I had to sit and break it down, just at first glance, haven't achieved anything that, as on equal level that Brady's achieved. I mean, you have Lionel Messi, who's a great soccer player, maybe the best of all time, but the World Cup has obviously eluded him for Argentina. That's the pinnacle of professional football. And you have Lauren Jackson, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to disrespect the WNBA, but from what I've read, she's not even the best player in the WNBA over that 20-year span. So that's a tough one to say that she's been the best. Cristiano Ronaldo, also another guy who hasn't really won anything. So to talk about dominance is a little bit embarrassing. Mike Trout hasn't even won a playoff series. So it's really hard to say that Mike Trout, of all of his 0 playoff series dominance, is higher on this list than Tom Brady. There are some names that I would give credit to. Like I said, Tiger Woods. Serena Williams is number 12, which to me is an atrocity because she's the greatest women's tennis player of all time. If you want to really look at it, I was reading a stat on her. Serena Williams. So Tiger Woods, obviously, in the first half of this 20 years, is the most dominant athlete in those 10. But over the 20 years, in the back 10 years that Tiger has not been dominant, Serena Williams has won 15 majors just in those 10 years, and I believe she has 26 overall. So Serena Williams being number 12 on this list is a bit of an embarrassment. Annika Sorenstam, another one, she's dominated the LPGA during her time, so I have no problem with her being on there. Barry Bonds being on there is another one who I think should be higher. 17 to me is a bit embarrassing. I think that's bias against baseball. I think he's one of the most dominant players of the last 20 years. Whether you believe he's injected or not, that's a whole nother story. But Tom Brady being number 20 on this list, I gotta believe that that's an embarrassment. I think Floyd Mayweather Jr. should be higher than 8. And Peyton and LeBron should not be anywhere near the top 3. But, I mean, ESPN slobs all over LeBron and Peyton, so it doesn't shock me or surprise me that they're there. The one I have questioning before I know that Spike's ready to ramp up on the NFL. Actually, I'll let you speak about the Peyton Manning Tom Brady before I go to another debate that I think that should be had at this point.
I mean, for me, I look at this article not for what it is on the surface. For what I see this is, ESPN knows that they are getting killed in the sports news market, in the sports broadcasting market. They're losing customers all the time. They're losing advertisers all the time. We've known that they've had a couple of rounds of, not only major but very public layoffs. Mm-hmm. And I think what this is ESPN knows that one of the reasons that they shot themselves in the foot is their stupidity over the way that they handled Deflategate and the Patriots and how they've gone after it. So that they very much calculated putting out this list and putting Tom Brady so far behind Peyton Manning so that people would talk about ESPN again, especially in the New England region. I think this was a cheap and disgusting ploy for them to try to get more readers, more subscribers, and more people talking about ESPN again to get themselves back in the headlines. I don't put any stock in this list. The entire thing is absolute garbage as far as I'm concerned. There's no rhyme or reason to it, even if they are trying to say that it's backed up by whatever nonsensical statistical method they decided to make up for this list. This is, this is cute. This is quaint. This is nothing that it needs to be, analyzed and poured over or anything else. Tom Brady is better than Peyton Manning. That's just not an argument anymore that we need to have anymore. It's just done. It's Peyton Manning does not deserve to be on this kind of list higher than Tom Brady, and it's just the other athletes on this list. And the other thing I'll take issue with is you're saying that Serena Williams is the best women's tennis player of all time. I don't know why you need to qualify it with women's tennis player. She might be the best tennis player of all time.
Potentially.
You're right. And it's just one of those things where it's like it doesn't need to be debated in such a way that gives ESPN credit. Like if CBS Sports or NBC Sports or one of the other competitors put out something like this and they put Tom Brady last, then I would want to take a look at it. But for this, I'm not even going to get riled up about it as much as I thought I might. It's a non-issue for me.
Right, and I know that obviously the issue is not just specifically how high Peyton is and how low Tom Brady is. It's realistically things like, how did you come to the conclusion of Mike Trout, a guy who, if he was so dominant, he'd either be winning MVPs or World Series, in which he's only won one, I believe, in the MVP category and 0 World Series. I mean, if we're talking dominance, Barry Bonds what he did at the plate. I mean, let's not forget, Barry Bonds is a guy who, with the bases loaded, got intentionally walked. I don't believe that has ever happened any other time in Major League Baseball in the entire history of what we can see. I mean, I don't know, maybe Babe Ruth or I doubt it. But the fact of the matter is, have you ever seen before or after a guy up with the bases loaded get intentionally walked? I mean, that is the pure epitome of a dominance in a sport. Just that one action.
Right, but I mean, even that didn't start happening until he was only playing about 1 out of every 3 games when he was in his 40s. You know, they weren't doing that to him when he was playing in, where was it, Pittsburgh, back when he was still good and still an all-star, but not so completely dominant.
Right, but this doesn't, from what I read, this article is not the most dominant athletes over the span of 20 years. This is the most dominant athletes over any period over the last 20 years. So it could have been 5, because, I mean, you look at it, okay, let's look at, they got Novak Djokovic on here. I mean, he had a dominating, 3-year period where Roger was hurt and Nadal was hurt. So he had a period where he was beating everybody but the 2 guys who were better than him. Obviously, Manny Pacquiao is not the best boxer of all time, but he is on here as well in number 19, where he has had dominating moments in his sport. Usain Bolt has only been dominant for 8 years out of the 20, the 3 Olympics. Which brings me to the point of, on this list, or excuse me, not on this list, is a guy who's won 23 gold medals in Michael Phelps. How is that not, dominance in swimming? The most gold medals of Olympic history and swimming history. He's not even in the top 20.
Right, and, the flip side of that is, if these are the most dominant athletes of 20 years in a sport, why is the same sport represented by multiple people? Like, how do you not nix Peyton Manning and put in Michael Phelps? How do you not nix, because they had Ronaldo and Messi on there, how do you not nix one of them and put in, Shaun White from snowboarding?
There's another one.
There are a lot of questions. I mean, this entire thing is flawed. This is so flawed, I'm actually surprised it wasn't written by 538.
Yeah, like you said, even with Djokovic, yes, he had a dominating period because of Roger Federer being out. Roger Federer is number 5. Jimmy Johnson's is clear. I believe he won 5 or 6 NASCAR titles in a row. That's pure dominance, in his sport. Like you said, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, if you're talking about dominance in a sport over their period of time, when is Peyton Manning's dominance? Like you said, he made 4 Super Bowls. He lost 2 of them, and his playoff record wasn't very pretty with the rest of the seasons. So I don't know when you talk about a dominance. Yes, he was able to change a lot of the audibling systems that a quarterback, goes through, and he was able to kind of be his own offensive coordinator. Yes, I don't know if that's classified really as dominance. And if you're talking about Peyton Manning doing that over Michael Phelps being able to outswim every single person in the world over the last 20 years, 5 Olympics, it's just, like you said, it's baffling to me that he's not even in the top 20 on this list, let alone probably, I gotta say at this point, my top 5 would be, I would say Bolt, in no particular order, Bolt, Phelps, Serena, Tiger, and then I would say either Floyd or Brady, number 5. Probably Floyd, Brady with just on the outside. I'd say that's my 5 in no particular order. That would be a hard debate with those, so that I'm not even going to try to number them. But another one, they've got. Would you guys put Sidney Crosby anywhere on this list? He's got to be the only hockey player of the last 20 years to really have established dominance. He's been the best player when he's healthy for the last 12 years.
I was just about to mention that. Was he healthy enough to be on this list? But when he was on the ice, he was definitely dominant being on this list. So, do you kind of look at that and be like...
he's made 4.
You put him in.
He's made 4, won 3. Arguably, like you said, I mean, 2 or 3 years of concussion issues and things probably hindered him a little bit. But like you said, it's not a 20-year overall look. It's, periods of dominance. I mean, is there anyone else in hockey over from 98 till now that's had that kind of dominance even in a short amount of time? I mean, nothing really comes to mind. Ovechkin you could talk about, but the titles just aren't there, or even the successful playoff, runs. I believe he has.
No, but I mean, one of the things, if we're looking at dominance in hockey, then for a skater, I think we have to look at Art Ross Award winners. So that's the total number of points over the, we're not talking just goals, but goals and assists. And, even in the past 10 or 12 years, Crosby's won it twice, but Malkin's also won it twice. So if Crosby isn't, and that might be that Crosby was hurt or out or whatever else, but, if you're not even necessarily the best player on your team for a couple of the years that they're looking at, then I don't see a way that Crosby can be included. He would be, if hockey needed a representative on this list, I can think of few people better to represent the NHL on a list like this than Sidney Crosby. I think the parity is too high, the injuries are too deep, and it's not a sport that we're going to see represented on this list anytime soon.
Yeah, Malkin was the Art Ross winner in 2009 when I believe Anthony Red Wing fan, help me out here. 2009 is when who won the cup? Is it Detroit or Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh was that one.
Okay, so then that was a year that Sidney was on the ice, but obviously Malkin was the more prolific point scorer. 2012, I know for a fact that's when Crosby was going through his issues. So you're right. Like Malkin's the only other two-time winner I see in the last 20 years that I can see on here, except for Jágr. Jágr won it. Jágr won it. Actually, shit. Jágr won it 4 years in a row. Actually, from '98 to 2001. So there's a one you could probably throw up there. I mean, I know that's 20 years ago, and no one really is on here on this list from, the 90s, the late 90s. I mean, I don't see anything. Barry Bonds was playing, but he wasn't as dominant Spike like you said. Michael Schumacher and Floyd Mayweather, probably the only ones I remember that would probably be playing in the 90s, just off the top of my head. So I really don't know. Like you said, as far as in-depth research, they probably didn't even go back as far enough to look at things like that, especially with ESPN. They don't really pay too much attention to hockey since Barry's left.
Yeah, they're like, hey, it's hockey. Let's leave it to Canada, eh?
So, obviously the big one is the 3 versus the 20. I can't believe Michael Phelps nowhere on the list. UFC had nobody even considered, considering Anderson Silva didn't lose a fight for like 14 years. Yeah. So, there's nobody there, from UFC. Chuck Liddell could have been a dominant. It seems, like you said, Spike, this thing seemed lazy, and it was just an attempt at clickbait to get us to do exactly what we're doing. And, ESPN's already kind of pissed off a lot of people, and as much as I know that they attempted this to get people talking, it may have actually backfired on them.
Yeah, and no matter what people are talking about ESPN, good, bad, or indifferent, we're mentioning their name, and that can only help them in the least, at least in the short term. This is the type of thing that we'll talk about. People get angry about it. Some people will agree with it, but in about a week, nobody will even remember that this thing existed. So I'm not overly concerned about it, but to me, like I said, it felt cheap.
Yeah. And the thing is like, I don't know, for me, like, maybe it's a difference between when I was, more in my youth and, than I am now. But to me, it was like, when I was growing up, ESPN, you could have taken all of the other channels away, with the exception of sports games. But I would never really watch anything else. And now I find myself not watching it at all. I mean, Does anybody else kind of share that sentiment?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you what channel it's on my DirecTV package.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it's like 205 or something like that. But I'm just saying, like, other than I know they have a Monday Night Football game, but it's like, I mean, I follow NHL Network, and other sports I can get from, this stuff comes across my phone, or I'd rather go on my phone and find it through Yahoo or CBS Sports, and You're right. It's just they've become too much of a storytelling instead of just a news reporting, and I kind of wish they'd get back to old school, but they've made their decision. We'll see.
No, they've gotten so bad they actually lost bowling to Fox Sports next year.
Hot take.
They lost their bowling contract.
Yeah, who's got bowling now?
Fox Sports starting next year.
Wow. So there you go. Yeah, what are you going to watch on Sundays now? In the NFL, if you're not an NFL fan, what are you going to watch on ESPN? Wasn't it bowling like every Sunday?
Yeah, it used to be like every Sunday.
I know that you guys like to give me shit about the amount that I talked about women's hockey leagues, but it's a little troubling that you were willing to do that, but not get on Tony for his bowling affinity.
That's because Anthony bowls. You don't play women's hockey.
Hey, you don't know.
Yeah, well, it's true. You might tuck your sack back and throw a cup on.
Don't let the beard fool you, I guess.
Have you played hockey in your life, Spike?
No, I could never skate.
So, no, I mean, I don't know. You're right. I don't know. Bowling, to me, I don't know. It doesn't. I don't think I gave you shit for women's hockey.
No, I mean, not at least not seriously. No, and yeah, well, first of all, I couldn't skate. Second of all, my nemesis growing up was a hockey player. So if I had wanted to join a team, I would have had to play with him. And thirdly, when I got to high school, hockey was a winter sport. I found another winter sport that I played, and I actually excelled at. So I decided to put hockey on the back burner. And I've enjoyed being a fan. So
is that like outdoor checkers?
Incorrect.
What did you excel at in high school? Because everybody's dying to know.
I'll let both of you take a guess, and then I'll tell you.
All right. What sport did Spike excel at in high school? That's outdoor. Is it outdoor winter?
No, indoor winter.
I have a guess.
Competitive ice cream eating.
All right.
Swimming.
Oh God, that would have been great. No, not swimming. And I will say that when I was vice president of the Greek and Latin club at high school, we tried to get a varsity bocce team on the payroll. But no, believe it or not, I was actually a competitive fencer.
Oh yeah, I think you've brought that up in the. That's not a winter sport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, it is in like high school and college athletics. It's a summer Olympic sport. But yeah, in high school, no, I found fencing. I fell in love with it, and I stuck through that.
That's kind of cool. What was I going to say?
I don't know. How do you come back from? How do you top fencing?
It might depend on the region where you're at. It depends whether it's a summer or winter sport in high school, all that too. So.
Yeah, I suppose that's possible.
Well, lucky for us, we could play the four major sports all year round because we had good weather. So, thanks for Florida. Anyways,
I would never want to live there.
Oh, I think you would.
Nah, it's too hot and muggy.
Says the guy who lives in Nevada.
Yeah, I can't deal with humidity anymore.
That's right.
Fair enough. The humidity does suck. I'll give you that. I can deal with the 115 temperatures out here a lot better than I can deal with 97% humidity. Yeah, I feel like I've taken a shower after I've taken a shower. I'm dripping in sweat. So yes, that is a fair assessment. I will give you that. So, anyways, gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for taking time out of your work schedule and your pretend sleeping schedule. Thank you, Token Tony, for waking up for this one. We appreciate it.
Yep, anytime.
And hopefully Spike, the dean, didn't come in and give you some shit.
No, we'll see what happens when I open the door, but I think I'm okay.
All right. This has been another episode of the Vegas Squares podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. You can catch us on Twitter at Vegas Squares, or you can catch Spike at Spike McAwesome, or Token Tony 89, or you can check our website out. It's vegassquares.com. We are also live every Tuesday and Saturday on 12 Ounce Sports Radio, 12ozsportsradio.com. You can listen to us there. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern, and also on the Forward Mile Podcast Network. You can catch us at forwardmile.com. Subscribe, sign up, click on the podcast tab, and you can hear us speak about, well, fencing, among other things, and bowling. So we appreciate everyone for tuning in. For the producer and myself in studio, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.